Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Today we learned that both the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission are investigating the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank last week. Sources tell NBC News the DOJ's probe is in its early stages. Part of it will examine whether bank executives sold any stock prior to the collapse. Now, of course, we should be clear here. I've covered quite a bit of this in my career. Banks can fail without any criminal behavior or fraud. Sometimes they make really bad bets or risky decisions. Sometimes they don't, and they get squeezed by a big bank run. We have only started to scratch the surface of what happened with Silicon Valley, and clearly it's complicated, as these kinds of things always tend to be. But one thing that does obviously jump out about the situation is that it happened in the wake of a big rollback of banking regulations. Because in 2018, Republicans in Congress pushed through legislation to undo a lot of rules for small and medium-sized banks, like SVB, that had been imposed under the bipartisan Dodd-Frank law in the wake of the 2008 crash. The person who signed that bill into law, the regulation rollback, none other than Donald Trump, it was one of a whole bunch of deregulatory moves he made while in office. In fact, he also oversaw the reversal of a train safety rule that requires electronically controlled brakes that reduce the risk of train derailments and explosions. Now, we just saw a devastating illustration of the risks of that kind of deregulation last month when a train carrying hazardous materials derailed in East Palestine, Ohio. Now, the push and pull over regulation is basically as old as the country, probably as old as democracy itself in some ways. In the present environment, the basics are this. Big corporations do not want to be heavily regulated, largely because it often raises their costs up front. They have to do things like pay to install new brakes, right? That costs money. They don't want to do it. Or they have to have a higher capital reserve, so their profit margins at a bank are lower. Again, they don't want to do it. The government, and that is to say us, the public, has an interest in imposing those kinds of regulations and costs up front because even if the risk of a crash or a bank run is slim, we know it's bound to happen at some point, right? Those crashes, metaphorical and literal, end up causing lots of destruction and misery. And in every case, always, it is the government, which is to say all of us, you and I, in the end, that will have to step in and pick up the pieces. That is what is happening in East Palestine, Ohio, where over 1 million gallons of toxic chemicals were released. Residents are still worried about the safety of their air and water. The Environmental Protection Agency remains deployed there trying to assess the damage, get people help. The same thing is happening with the failure of Silicon Valley Bank and, in its wake, New York-based Signature Bank. The government, in the body of the FDIC, has stepped in, taking over both institutions, guaranteeing that customers will get their money back. Banks, railroad companies will always want to basically live on the edge, right? Ramp up the risk. Capture the gains. They want to be independent of the government, except when things go terribly wrong and then they need help. But these two ongoing situations illustrate exactly why deregulation can be so costly, both in dollar terms and human terms. And of course, it's not at all surprising that Donald Trump, Republican president, pushed those policies. This is what Republican presidents do. It's a huge priority when they come to office. Ronald Reagan did it, as did George W. Bush. What makes it a little different this time, and in some ways more interesting, is the ideology Republicans use to provide rhetorical cover for their actions. Because the pre-Trump Republican Party, the party, say, of Reagan, Bush, Paul Ryan, right, they would make a case for deregulation on the merits, as it were, right? We're not just crassly serving corporate interests, but this is about free enterprise, right? Too much government interference burdens companies, and it makes them less competitive, and we get higher costs, so we want to unshackle them, right? Produce free, dynamic economic activity. That kind of rhetoric and that kind of rhetorical, ideological justification, that has been somewhat in retreat, displaced by Donald Trump and his MAGA populism. Republicans don't talk about that anymore. They don't even really use the word freedom that much. The new Republican rhetoric is all about how people are trying to screw you. Big, powerful folks and institutions, including the corporations and the banks. And that doesn't quite gel with deregulation. If you were upset that the people of East Palestine got screwed, and boy, did they ever, well, the railroad company did that. The same railroads that Donald Trump, MAGA king, deregulated. If you think it's crazy that Silicon Valley Bank's big money depositors are now getting a government backstop, well, it was your guy, Donald Trump, who deregulated the banks in the first place. So, the Trump-aligned Republican Party has to come up with some sort of cover story that papers over this inherent ideological contradiction. And it's not an easy task, and I have to, credit where due, tip my cap to them. Because they landed on a truly comically preposterous one. Folks, we've got an outbreak of woke banks.
This is really the first bank failure that was caused by adherence to woke beliefs and policies.
The Obama administration, Eric Holder, swooped in and imposed DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion standards on the entire financial sector. And that's one of the main reasons our big banks are now increasingly incompetent.
This bank, they're so concerned with DEI and politics and all kinds of stuff. I think that really diverted from them focusing on their core mission.
Silicon Valley Bank is a woke Biden bank. They were holding seminars on Lesbian Visibility Day and National Pride Month.
They were one of the most woke banks.
They made loans to very risky ventures based more on their liberal wokeness than on the actual ability for that borrower to pay the loans back.
To be clear, this was the bank that Peter Thiel, the big Trump backer, the big billionaire right-wing dude, like his funds put their money there. This was the bank of the Silicon Valley tech pros. This bank, the woke bank. In a recent Wall Street Journal op-ed, opinion columnist Annie Kessler makes it perhaps even clearer. And again, kudos to him for that. He knows that Silicon Valley's bank's board consists of, quote, 45% women, 1 black, 1 LGBTQ+, and 2 veterans. I'm not saying 12 white men would have avoided this mess, but the company may have been distracted by diversity demands. Wow. I guess, well, I don't want to put words in his mouth because he's not saying, but what he is saying is that the women, the 1 black guy, the 1 gay person, not to mention the 2 veterans, sitting on the board are why the bank failed. It's equal parts offensive and preposterous. But, and here's the thing, it's important, it's not really meant to persuade anyone else or anyone who is persuadable. I don't think it can persuade anyone else. It's not a serious argument. It's not really even an argument. It is solely meant to keep their base in line. It is the kind of lie you tell when you must, out of necessity, reverse engineer something, anything, to spackle over the monstrously apparent contradictions within your own ideology. And the irony here is, as Josh Barro astutely points out, there are plenty of, quote, available narratives conservatives should like about what happened to Silicon Valley Bank. I mean, they could plausibly say, for just an example, Democrats passed too much fiscal stimulus, which led to inflation, which led to rapid rate hikes that brought SVB down. Now, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's really a story. It is at least coherent. But instead...
And Lord knows what other left-wing romping was going on in these woke banks. And by the way, San Francisco Fed head Mary Daly is considered herself to be quite a wokester.
That's right. The woke wokesters almost woke the economy. Are you tracking this? Despite all the ideological, rhetorical transformation brought about by Donald Trump and his new populist right, and there is really some considerably, institutionally, in a sort of political economy sense, the Republican Party, the conservative coalition, is still the same at its core. It's the same pro-corporate, deregulatory, burn-it-to-the-ground outfit as they have been for all of my adult life. Except now they have to tell increasingly deranged stories to cover it up. And here we are, all living with the consequences.